After 18 years of war, waged largely by various armed groups organized and financed by the CIA, Pakistani intelligence, and the sale of heroin, society in Afghanistan is on the verge of collapse. Things might not be as bad as they have become, but the people chosen by the CIA to wage a guerrilla war against the democratically elected government of President Najibullah, who was recently murdered, happen to be the most extreme religious fanatics to gain power on a national level since the late 1300s. Upon conquering the capital of Kabul, the Taliban militia, which is composed of people schooled in Islamic thought, sorta, by Pakistani agents, decreed that women will not work outside the home and girls will not be educated. The reaction of the world community was swift, though stunned. Most of the professionals and white-collar workers in Afghanistan are women, the men having been killed in war. These female workers also staffed relief agencies trying to provide some level of subsistence to Afghanistan. After September 27, 1996, they were sent home, and at this recording had yet to return. That is not the important bit. It is significant that a government in the 20th century would decree new discrimination against a majority of their population, but such is the work of the CIA. What is important is world reaction. Aid agencies, both private and governmental, and national policy leaders from around the world. People were shocked, stunned, and immediately began to stop their programs in protest. Not that it really took much effort to stop the aid and education programs, what with the lack of employees to keep them going. Aid work was stopped out of necessity and principle. That is the important bit. The world community agreed that any one nation's religious beliefs did not supersede the universal principle of human rights. To be sure, experts in Islam, secular and religious, have been denouncing the Taliban's version of Sharia as flawed both practically and theologically. This is to be expected. These religious experts realize the significance of world reaction. If they can portray the Taliban as an exception, a mistake, then the significance of world opinion might be mitigated, but it is very important for the cause of human rights that world opinion is clearly and obviously willing to trample on the deeply held religious beliefs of people or nations who willfully choose to violate human rights. The implications of this development are tremendous, and no doubt threatening to fundamentalists around the world. The anti-choice movement in this country, for example, must by now see the writing on the wall. The anti-choice movement is based on a subtle but pervasive belief that humans are the inalienable possession of other powers, presumably God. Though the origins of this belief, and the theology which opposes contraception, homosexuality, and abortion, dates from the Middle Ages, when the ruling class claimed that the peasantry, aka ordinary people, were the property of the various monarchies. Religious dictators then, of course, claimed that the princes and kings represented God, the so-called divine right of kings. But in the end, the ruling class simply wanted to own everyone, as well as everything. The Taliban obviously have the same sorts of belief, especially as regards women and children, who are just chattel now. The fundamentalists here are trying to create the same system of laws in America, vis-a-vis children, whom they believe should be property, chattel. But the tide is turning. The world is becoming more rational, and with that change is the turn to a system of ethics based on logical argument and the commonalities of human experience. Some religious people argue that ethics requires religious belief. This position, while at times may be well-intentioned, is absurd. The appeal to a higher authority than human experience for ethical beliefs inevitably results in terribly unethical consequences. The claim that ethics requires a higher power is contradictory. Ethics based on a standard other than human end up in justifications for the most extreme barbarism and senseless cruelty. This happens because human life becomes expendable if one claims to have purposes which transcend human experience. I've always believed in the ethics of decreasing suffering. That is, that which is good is that which contributes to a reduction in the level of suffering tolerated by human beings. And I am heartened that this point of view has won out. True, there are hangers-on still grasping at the last straws of the ethics of domination, like the Christian Coalition or the Taliban. But those people will eventually disappear, and the world will be a beautiful and happy place without them. World opinion has been expressed, and it is firmly in support of human rights. And someday, hopefully soon, even the United States will recognize the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This is Richard Curtis.